Good morning, St. Joseph Angels. It is the beginning of May, and that means it's time for a new virtue. Our virtue for May is the word gentleness. So we have the word gentleness here behind me. And some of the things that we talk about when we speak of gentleness means how we speak to others. Do we speak in a gentle voice? That means, are we sensitive to others? Are we tolerant of things they might be saying? And do we show them compassion? So when you're talking, we need to think about what you, not just the words you say, but how you say them. Are they sensitive, tolerant, and compassionate? We also talk about being gentle in the way that we play with others. So think about recess. Are you playing carefully with others? Are you playing without causing them harm? And that harm could be both physical harm, like hurting them by pushing them down, but it can also be emotional harm by saying or doing things that hurt their feelings. So are you being gentle in the way that you play with others? And the third thing we speak of when we speak of the word gentleness is how we treat one another. Are we treating one another with respect? Are we saying and doing and talking in a respectful way? So this month, as we're talking about gentleness, I want you to keep in mind how you sound, how you play, what you do. Are they all done in a spirit of gentleness? So you might ask, so what is the opposite of gentle? If I'm not gentle, what am I? And here are a few words that we would call the vices that go with gentleness. And that would be to be critical of someone, right? Always picking at them, picking at what they do, nitpicking. That can be critical. Or sarcastic. Do you always have a sarcastic remark to make when someone speaks to you? So sarcasm and being critical would be the opposite of being gentle. And the other thing would be to have too much anger in excess. Now, being angry itself isn't necessarily always bad, because sometimes anger leads us to do things or to improve a situation. But the problem is when we are angry in excess, when we lose our self-control, that's the vice. So be thinking about how you're controlling things that upset you. So our saint for this month, we always talk about a saint, and the saint I picked this month is Saint Francis de Sales. This is a picture of him, an icon picture of him. He was born in the 1500s, late 1500s, and then lived into the early 1600s. He is known as the Saint of Gentleness. It's interesting because as he was growing up, he actually had a very angry temperament. He got often very angry, not just with himself, or not just with others, but also with himself. And so throughout his life, he had to really work on being gentle, or having that spirit of gentleness. And he became known then eventually as the Saint of Gentleness. He has a great story. He was born in Switzerland, around kind of near Geneva. He eventually became a bishop and a doctor of the church. A doctor of the church means that he was a great writer of information for the church. So he was a doctor of the church and a bishop. He knew he wanted to be a priest from a very early age, but his father wanted him to become a lawyer. And so he didn't want to disappoint his father, so he ended up going to law school at the University of Paris and became a lawyer. But all through that schooling, all through that studying, he never really lost that desire to serve the Lord. And so there's a great story about him as he was riding his horse through the forest. One day he fell off the horse three times in the same day. And every time he fell off, he always carried a sword in a sheath. And every time he fell off that horse, that sword and the sheath that it was in would land on the ground in the shape of a cross. And he took that as a sign to mean that he needed to become a priest. And so he ended up leaving the law profession and became a priest, even though his father didn't want him to do that. During the time of his priesthood was at the time of the Protestant Reformation. And so many people were leaving the church. And so he kind of took it upon himself to really try to teach the truth about the church, and bring people back to the church. And he would ride through the countryside, knock on doors. Not everybody wanted to hear from him. They would throw rocks at him or slam the door in his face. And he just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it with much perseverance. And he also realized that if, as people stopped being willing to talk to him, he realized that if he showed gentleness and kindness to their children, that the parents would be more likely to listen. And so he started practicing that virtue of gentleness when he was working with children. During that time of his life, it was falsely or wrongly known that only holy people or only priests or clergy could be really holy, that lay people like me or you wouldn't be able to achieve great holiness because we weren't preachers. And so he taught people that that was not the truth, that all of us are called to a holiness, regardless of what our place in life is. And that call to holiness, the more holy we become, the more we become like Jesus Christ. And so his whole goal was to get people to be as close to Jesus as possible by becoming holy. And let's see, what else? As I said, he became known as the Saint of Gentleness. And two things that he talked about was not just gentleness to other people, but also gentleness to yourself. And so sometimes we can be really hard, not just on our friends and neighbors, but also we can be really hard on ourselves, and we kind of nitpick at ourselves. And he says we need to be as merciful and gentle with ourselves as we are with others, and to treat ourselves just as well as we can. He also talked a lot about in prayer time, how we might be really hard on ourselves because we think, oh, I don't pray very well because every time I pray, I'm distracted and I think about other things. And he says to give yourself be gentle with yourself and forgive yourself for that, and just keep coming back and bringing yourself back to prayer and never giving up on it. And that will help you achieve holiness. So again, St. Francis de la Sales, the Saint of Gentleness, and our word for this month will be gentleness. So let's think the rest of the month about how we speak to one another, how we play with one another, how we treat one another. Have a great day.